Hello you guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to Evita Cooks and Preps. Over the past few weeks I've been sharing updates of the different fermentation projects that I'm working on. Typically the end of the summer, early fall is when I do a lot of my ferments, like the vinegars or the homemade wine. This one is the watermelon wine that I racked, and now we're just allowing it to settle or set for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then I'm just gonna put it into the storage. I've also shared updates of the fire cider, and this is what the fire cider looks like after I rack it or strain it. And I just want to point out that when I strained my fire cider, I actually pushed through the solids, and I don't mind if I end up with some of it in the bottom of the bottle. In fact, that is just additional medicine, so I'm not worried about that at all. I also add a fermented chili in the bottle as well. Remember that turmeric is activated by using a heat source, typically black pepper, cayenne pepper. I like using these fermented Thai chilies instead. And over here I have the Thai chilies that I fermented in September of last year. And if you've not seen what they look like, this is what they look like. They smell amazing, but I will caution you to be very careful. These are extremely hot. But check it out, it's been more than a year since I made these, and they look amazing. Besides the fire cider and the watermelon wine, I also showed you guys updates on the fermented drinks or the all-natural probiotics. The fermented drinks is something that I do all year round, and this is a blackberry starter that I did a couple of days ago. Take a look at how active it is. It's been 3 days since I made it. This one's actually ready for the refrigerator. Sometimes they ferment slowly, and sometimes they ferment very rapidly. Same day I made the blackberry starter, I made this chamomile starter with some fresh chamomile, and same thing, it's very active. In fact, I'm very impressed by it because the chamomile fermented a lot quicker than it normally does. But look at that, this one's also ready for the refrigerator. I might even leave it a little bit longer, maybe until tomorrow, just to make it even fizzier. But I don't really think it's gonna be necessary. I hope you guys can see all those bubbles and how active it is, and it smells and tastes amazing. But today's video is all about the content of this gallon jug that I have right here. Have you ever wondered what 14-month-old lacto-fermented tomatoes look like? Well, I'm going to show you in just a little second what they look like, and also remind you that if you haven't seen the full tutorial on how to make these lacto-fermented tomatoes, I'll share the link right up here. First, I'm going to start by showing you what the tomatoes look like submerged in the water, but point you out to the white foam at the very top, which is perfectly normal. Even though these have been lacto-fermenting for about 14 months, I made these on August the 18th of last year. Sometimes what happens is that they continue to ferment. One thing that I did in that video, and I'm not really sure if I talked about it at the end of the video, is that once the tomatoes went through the lacto-fermentation, I strained the tomatoes and put them back into the jar with some purified water, and that's how I store them. And this is just to show you that you don't need to process them or can them to preserve them longer. And this is the proof, and I'm going to show you what the texture looks like also. I get a lot of questions about what they look like, if you need to can them, how to store them. One of the things that I wanted to point out by showing you these, which happened to be the last of the jars from the tomatoes I made last year, even though they were lacto-fermented last year, they keep fresh for a very long time. The only thing you want to keep an eye on is the type of mold that you get on the top. If the mold is white like this one, as you can see, it looks a little bit foamy, kind of like a thin white silky layer, and that is totally normal. But if it starts to turn black or green, maybe you want to remove it. I've never had that happen to me, but that's not to say that it won't. So just keep an eye on it. At the end of the lacto-fermentation, what I did is I discarded that water and then put the tomatoes back into the jar with some clean purified water, and this is how I kept them stored for 14 months, and these will be good for even longer. It's just that I'm down to my last one, so I'm going to start using these, and I figure I will show you guys what they look like. Inside the jar you might see that there is a glass plate in it, and that's one of the tools that you can use to keep the tomatoes submerged or under the water, which is key anytime you do fermentation. So for instance, if you're making fermented carrots or fermented peppers, whatever the case may be, the most important factor for the tomatoes to remain as fresh as possible is that it is imperative that they remain submerged under the lacto-fermented liquid, which, by the way, I reserved a little bit of the lacto-fermented liquid before putting them back into the jar and adding fresh water. I'm going to pull the glass out. I'm also going to pull one of the tomatoes so that you guys can see the texture of the tomatoes. This morning I used some of these tomatoes to make my husband an omelet with some maple flavored Spam. So make sure you look for that video. When you use a weight for your fermented projects, it should be glass. They do sell those weights. I own them, but to be honest with you, they're so expensive. Just find something that will fit inside the jug and that will be fine. Here is what the tomatoes look like. I'm going to use that same plate to pull it out. I'm going to take out a couple of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the tomatoes, chop them up, and add some of those green serrano chilies and make that famous tomatoes and green chili sauce that is skyrocketing in price. I used to buy the case of them. I believe it was $3.98 for 8 of them, and now you can't even find them for under $8 for the same case. So I figure I will make my own and it'll probably taste even better. So let me move this to the side so you guys can see the texture of the tomatoes. I did not bring a cutting board, and to be honest with you, you don't need it. But look at this. This is what the tomatoes look like. These are Roma tomatoes. Actually, I'm going to put them into this little fancy plate my mother sent me from Puerto Rico. Just try to strain some of that liquid, which you can save and use it for cooking or to restart another lacto-fermented project. But look at this. They're soft, but they do hold their shape. And I wish you guys could taste them. It is kind of hard to describe the flavor of the tomatoes. In fact, when you lacto-ferment vegetables, first of all, you get an enormous amount of natural probiotics that are very good for your digestion. It also enhances the natural sweetness of the tomatoes. And for those of you that have not seen my video on how to make these lacto-fermented tomatoes, in that video I talk a little bit about why it is a good idea to do that. But also I shared with you guys that a lot of those companies that make the best or the highest quality spaghetti sauce, they actually lacto-ferment their tomatoes. And like I said, one of the reasons why they do that is because it enhances the flavor of the tomatoes. So I hope you guys give these tomatoes a try. Check out my video on how to make the lacto-fermented tomatoes, the different flavored waters, the fire cider, as well as that homemade pineapple wine that I shared a while ago. And if you're enjoying these fermentation projects and updates, consider subscribing to the channel, like, share, and comment for the YouTube algorithms, and activate the bell so you never miss out on any of my videos. Until next time, I'm Evita, Cooks and Preps. Bon appetit! You really have to try it.